Now, it doesn't matter whether you're taking photos with a DSLR camera, a mirrorless camera, or even a smartphone. There's 3 essential steps you want to follow that will help you take better photos. Hi, Paul here from Photogenius. Now, this channel is dedicated to helping you take better photos. So if you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing. Now, I've been taking photos for a long time. I got my first camera when I was just 15 years old. Now, it doesn't matter whether I'm taking pictures of people, portraiture. It doesn't matter whether I'm doing landscape photography, product photography, or even sports photography. There are always 3 things that I do pretty much on autopilot because I've been doing this for quite a long time. And that's what this video is all about. 3 steps, 3 things to really seriously consider before you press that shutter button. Now, step number 1 when taking a picture is always going to be composition. Composition can make or break a photo. It's as simple as that. If my composition isn't really working, I probably won't take the picture anyway. Plus, composition is going to affect the next 2 steps. So it's important to lock this one down early. Now, when I'm running my photography courses and workshops here in Brisbane, a comment that I often hear from people is this: I'm not very artistic, therefore I don't really get composition. Now, I think few people are born artistic. These are things you can learn and develop over time with practice. There's one really important composition rule that we're not going to cover in this video. It's called the rule of thirds, but I've done a separate video all about it and I definitely recommend checking it out. I'll put a link below this video and also up here in the corner. Now, what I do want to talk about in this video, because this is something we can all do, is this: viewpoint. What I mean by viewpoint? Well, from where you take the photo. My viewpoint is from here. I'm looking at the world from, the height of an average person. But when I'm taking pictures of, let's say, my daughter, who's shorter than me, I'm not taking a photo from here. I'm bringing the camera down to a lower vantage point, a lower viewpoint, to deliver a picture which for me works much better. When my kids were babies, when they were much smaller, I'd lay on the floor to take photos. I've got a heap of amazing photos of my kids taken from their viewpoint. Now, this is something that is very easy to do. This isn't about button pressing or how fancy your camera is, so you can do this with a DSLR type camera or even your smartphone. Changing the viewpoint delivers an image that is just a bit more interesting, a bit more engaging, and that's what composition should be about. It doesn't have to be hard. Let me show you some examples. For this reflection photo to work, we need to be right down so the camera is almost skimming the puddle. Here, a low angle means we're seeing the world from the same viewpoint as the person we're photographing. And finally, from a really low vantage point, putting the camera up creates an interesting view of a lighthouse with some dramatic skies overhead. So once I've got my composition sorted, the next thing I want to do is consider focusing on that subject. Why? Well, the obvious reason is I want my subject to be sharp and in focus. But number 2, I also want to help the camera establish where my subject is and what my subject is, because that can often help the cameras like me to give you a decent exposure. So focusing is doubly important. Now, focusing with a smartphone is as easy as tapping on the screen. Really simple. Focusing specifically with cameras like this can be a bit trickier. And if you're shooting in auto, you have no control over this. So I'm hoping, because you're watching this video, that you're already getting into using the cameras manually. Now, I've done a separate video all about focusing, where I show you how to control the focus points so you can specifically focus where the subject is. I'll put a link up here and in the description below. So make sure you check that one out. Focusing is number 2. Okay, so step number 1 was composition. Step number 2 was focus. Step number 3 is exposure. Now, what do I mean by exposure? Well, exposure is a term carried over from the film days. When we press the shutter button on the camera, the shutter opens and you expose the film to light. Now, the technology has changed. You're now exposing a digital sensor to light. Although the technology has changed, the principles haven't changed that much. Now, if you're taking photos with an iPhone or a smartphone, it's pretty easy. You compose your photo, you tap to focus, and on an iPhone, you can change your exposure simply by moving your finger up and down the screen. That is a really great tip for you iPhone photographers out there. Now, if you're using a bigger camera like this, it's a little bit more complicated because there are 3 things that affect exposure: aperture, shutter speed, ISO. Now if you're using your camera in the auto mode, you don't have any control over this, so you don't have any control or say in your exposure. But if you're willing to learn some basics, you do. A good mode to start if you're a beginner is program mode. This is P on the camera dial. I've done a video all about exposure. It's called Exposure for Beginners. I recommend checking it out. You've guessed it. I'll put a link up here and in the description below this video. But getting the exposure right is step number 3. So the next time you're taking a picture, it doesn't matter whether you're using a smartphone or a bigger camera like these, think about the 3 steps to taking a better photo. This is Boo. This is the latest addition to the Photogenius family. If you want to see more of Boo, consider subscribing because I think she's going to crop up on some of my future videos. If you've enjoyed this video, please give us a thumbs up, consider subscribing to my channel, and don't forget you can leave your comments, suggestions or questions down below. I hope we'll see you again sometime soon. See ya. Bye.